Hello and welcome to Seattle City Makers. I'm your host, Jon Scholes. Well, welcome everybody to our latest episode where I'm joined by Karen Lee, who was named the CEO of Plymouth Housing in June of 2022. Karen is a graduate of West Point and served 4 years in the Army, including a tour of duty overseas. She's a former agency director under Governor Chris Gregoire. She serves on the board of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco and Virginia Mason, the University of Washington Foundation, and recently joined the board of the Downtown Seattle Association, and we're happy to have her. Prior to being named the CEO of Plymouth, Karen served for many years as CEO of Pioneer Human Services. For those not familiar, Plymouth Housing is a nonprofit organization started by the congregation of Plymouth Church in downtown Seattle in 1980. And since that time, they've grown to be one of the largest providers of permanent supportive housing within our community. They operate and have developed over a dozen buildings within the city of Seattle and are now developing buildings outside of the city as well to meet the needs of those that are suffering on our street, to bring them inside into permanent housing with wraparound services. I discuss with Karen her vision and priorities for Plymouth, her perspective on the crisis of homelessness, and how the fentanyl crisis is impacting those that are living unsheltered on our streets. We discuss her optimism around our ability as a community to solve this crisis and some of the progress we're making in addressing veterans' homelessness and homelessness experienced by women and children as well in our community. And we discuss her first job, where she worked alongside former Seattle Mariner Mike Blowers. And of course, our standard question, we ask Karen the itinerary for her perfect Saturday in Seattle. Hope you enjoy my conversation with Karen Lee, the CEO of Plymouth Housing. Well, thank you again for making time for this. It's interesting that our most recent guest, Chris Daniels, is a former alum of Curtis High School, as I am, and now we have you, another South Sound graduate from Clover Park.
That's right.
The Timberwolves now. I see they've
I've
upgraded
heard
their name.
They changed their name.
Mascot.
Clover Park Timberwolves.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're happy to have you.
Thank you.
So not quite a year on the job yet, but a year since you were appointed by the board at Plymouth as CEO. Right?
Yes.
June of 22. And what did you start in September?
Started in late August, almost September.
Late August, yeah. So why'd you want the job, and what's the vision and set of priorities you're bringing to Plymouth?
Well, homelessness is such an important issue to the city of Seattle. And when I had the opportunity to lead Plymouth, I thought I'll be even closer to something that is really important to all the residents here. And that made a lot of sense to me.
Mm-hmm. And you've had a career helping people.
I've had a career of
time.
helping people and serving people, and it's something I just love to do. I feel honored to be able to do it.
How have you approached your first several months on the job of figuring out what do you start, what do you continue, what do you stop with an organization that's had a lot of success and had a great leader in Paul Ambrose? Just from a leadership perspective, how have you approached bringing your own vision and set of priorities to the organization around a issue that is tough and was made tougher by the pandemic?
So Paul Ambrose did a fabulous job as the CEO of Plymouth. And so the first thing that I really did was focus on the strategic plan. So what is the next version of Plymouth going to look like? And we took our time. It took us about 4 months, but the board and the staff and the employees, we are focused, I think, in an area that will help Plymouth grow and Plymouth be stable. We're going to focus on our residents and not only grow the number of residents that we serve, but how we serve our residents. And we're going to continue to serve our residents in a deeper way. And so the first thing that we will be doing is a number of studies to take a look at what is the acuity level of the people that we're serving. Is our service model appropriate, or do we need to do some different things? We believe we do. We believe that we need to integrate behavioral health in a way that we haven't before. And we're also starting to look at, should we have different type of apartment buildings? We only have one recovery-oriented building right now. Is that something that we should do more of? Our residents would certainly like us to.
Which means a place you can't use.
That's right, where
Yeah.
everyone is in recovery. So
Yeah.
obviously, you're not going to be evicted if you have a drink, but certainly it will be a place that is very focused on recovery, and there won't be open drug use anywhere. So, and it will be a condition of the lease. And that's something that our residents have asked for, quite frankly. So the first area of focus is how do we continue to serve our residents in a way that's more deeper and more holistic, and will address the resident needs that we see today and not the resident needs we saw 10 years ago. So
And
that's
are your residents coming to you now with more complex behavioral health issues than what you saw a decade ago?
And our residents no longer come from partners who are operating shelters. So today we could get a resident that might have been homeless for 4 or 5 years and living in a tent for 4 or 5 years, coming to us directly. They wouldn't even have stopped and had to stay in a tiny home or stopped and had a day in a shelter. And so that resident will obviously have more things to adjust to and require a higher ratio of services than someone who's already, started that process. So that's an example. We're also focused to serve our residents and improving our facilities, the homes where they live. We want to make sure that they're all a certain level of quality, and we have a big focus around building cleanliness, building safety, all those things that all apartment buildings need. Our next focus area is staff. We want to make sure that we're employer of choice. We want to make sure that we're meeting our staff needs in terms of training, career opportunities, compensation levels, workplace environment, and recognition. So all the things that make you a happy employee, we want to make sure we're doing for our employees because they're in the front lines every day, and they're serving a particularly vulnerable and intense population, and we need to make sure that we're supporting them. The third area, like any other nonprofit, was we have to be financially stable. Plymouth is known for fundraising, and it's something that we enjoy doing. We have a lot of major events that do well, but we're still a nonprofit. We're still in the business of permanent supportive housing, which has a negative margin. So making sure that we're financially stable is something that is important to me, the board, the community. So that's important to us. Los Angeles, if I can digress just for a second. So Los Angeles had a very prominent low-income housing provider called Skid Row. They just went under, and what they would do is they would buy older buildings, so they had very old stock, and then they would make that available to individuals that are homeless. And they didn't have enough diversity in their types of building stock to stay healthy. And so, going under can happen.
So they got overcome by the renovation and
yes,
maintenance
by
costs
the
and operating
renovation
costs.
and the maintenance really did them in. And so that's something that we in particular want to make sure that we stay away from. So financial health is very, very important.
And what's your scale today? I know you just opened the first new affordable housing high-rise on First Hill in, 50 years?
Yes.
With Bellwether. And what's the total
Yes.
number of units and buildings Plymouth has got in the city today?
We're going to open another one this year in Bellevue, which is called Plymouth Crossings. And so at the end of the year, we'll have 1,600 units in downtown Seattle and neighboring suburbs. So we're very proud of the role that we play and the role of permanent supportive housing. So for example, a UW professor named Greg Colburn, you might actually want to have him here if you haven't had him. So he wrote a book called Homelessness is a Housing Problem, and he talked about just how the fact that here in Seattle we have a shortage of housing units, and that alone can drive homelessness, right? If you just don't have enough places for people to live, there's not much that you can do. And even if we continue to grow our shelter capacity, there's still no place to go until you have a permanent place a person can live. And that's what Plymouth really provides to the community is a permanent solution where people can live the rest of their lives. And it's important for us to be able to provide that service to Seattle and neighboring communities.
Are we not, though, investing enough as well in the transitional housing so that people are more ready when they get keys to a Plymouth unit? It sounds from your earlier comment that we don't have enough of those spaces, and so you're getting folks that have a lot of complex issues that haven't already been addressed before they're able to live on their own.
Yes. If you think about the levies that are going to be going before the voters, one can argue that Seattle is a model because we do have levies and we do commit to addressing homelessness and its causes. And I'm very appreciative of the generosity of the community that we live. On the same token, I have to add that it's not enough. Mm-hmm. And because all of the providers in our space are doing everything they can, but because we don't have enough resources for everyone, the voters can sometimes get the impression that nothing is going to work. And that's really not the message we want the voters to have. What we want is for voters to understand is that that the work that all the providers do in this space, it's effective for a particular population type. Mm-hmm. But for having adequate resources and an adequate number of units, we could solve this problem. So for permanent supportive housing, for the chronically homeless, our results are 96% remain housed. So, mm-hmm. And that's what you would expect from a permanent supportive housing provider. And we can do more of that if we have more resources. So we're quite thankful for the commitment of Seattle and King County, and we'll continue to push for more resources from all sources, from the state, from the federal government, from everyone.
And voters this November will have a big opportunity to increase their investment and local resources through the renewal of the Seattle Housing Levy, which is really a pretty significant expansion, at least in dollars, right?
Yes, we have the Seattle Housing Levy, and then we also have the King County will also run a levy for veterans and seniors and vulnerable adults.
What about the state and the federal government, and what is their role been recently? What is it today? Are they doing enough, or are we trying to fight a big fire with limited tools at the local level that we'll never be able to get a handle on if we don't have investment from the state and the feds?
We are fighting a fire with limited tools because we need more from the state, we need more from the federal government. At this point across the country, the cities that are struggling, they are like Seattle. They have to have local levies because we're not getting enough resources from the federal government. The federal government will look at us and say, well, it's only a problem in Seattle. It's only a problem in San Francisco. It's only a problem in, New York. So why, should a citizen in the heart of the U.S. care? But citizens in the heart of the U.S., if they will have this problem too, if they all of a sudden have a housing boom. Mm-hmm. They're just not having one. So we are not supported as well as we should be. So let's just start with how we fund buildings. We have one program that's very, very good, low-income housing tax credits, and it is limited. It is not flexible. So certainly the government could do much more in that entire space. The housing, so HUD, Housing and Urban Development, there's a lot more that they can do in terms of funding, in terms of programming, in terms of the requirements that we have to follow, give us much more flexibility. Here's an example. Plymouth has 1,800 units, and for once a new resident comes to live with us, for us to move that resident to another building, you would not believe the paperwork that we have to supply to anyone that helped fund the building, to HUD, to the IRS, because we have to income qualify everyone. Mm-hmm. So so when I say we want to have a recovery building, most of our requirements don't support that. Because HUD says you have to be a housing first provider. We get that. But do you think that every single person who wants housing first wants to be in an environment where you can still, choose to use substances? No, many want to become sober.
Right.
So that's an example of a regulation that really, really ties our hands. And I could go on.
And some good intentions there, but maybe not meeting the need.
It's a baseball bat when you have a complex problem
Yeah.
that has to be solved on an individual level. Very difficult.
What do you think the average person in the city that has maybe voted for tax increases to fund housing is generally supportive of getting folks off the street, but they're frustrated with what they see. They're frustrated with the progress, the complexity. What don't they understand about this issue?
Well, I would say that, first of all, just because they see someone on the street, it doesn't mean that that person is unhoused or unsheltered. Because we also have a fentanyl crisis going. So it could be a housed person that is just looking for to purchase a particular substance. So at the same time, we also have to realize that we do have a fentanyl problem right now. So that's the first thing. That may not be an unhoused person. The second thing is just to keep in mind that housing programs are effective and that they can have hope that we can solve this problem. It's solvable. And, we have a regional homelessness, the King County Regional Homelessness, KCHRA, Homelessness Authority, puts out a lot of statistics where we can see where we've made progress. If we look at the number of veterans who have experienced homelessness, that number has dropped 50% in the last 10 years.
And similar success with women and families.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's
women
right.
and children.
So it's really possible. And I think that's the message that I want to leave with people. It is not hopeless at all.
We have some success stories.
We
here.
do.
You mentioned fentanyl. How do you think of that crisis in the intersection with those who are unhoused? I mean, we see the numbers of overdoses, non-fatal and fatal overdoses just skyrocketing in the city of Seattle. There's some strong overlap with the unhoused community. Is housing part of the treatment answer there? What do we do with this public health emergency that we're not doing today?
Well, housing is not treatment, but it provides stabilization, which is important. So it really shows the need for treatment on demand. And so I think that the King County voters got it right when they passed a levy to support on-demand behavioral health services. So that is just
this
key.
past April, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And certainly expanding permanent supportive housing opportunity, and then within those facilities having treatment available within the facility is important, and that's something that we're doing as well. All of our staff are trained, and we've had staff that had to deliver Narcan. So I think that's important as well, and then to make that very available in public places. It's a very, very powerful drug. I think I read that it was 50 times more powerful than heroin, if I'm correct. I could be wrong on that, but it's extremely powerful and very addictive, and you have to use it more.
Right.
So it's a health crisis for now, for sure.
And are you seeing in your own buildings people with fentanyl addiction and having to manage?
All of our staff are trained.
Yeah.
And we've unfortunately had a fatality in our facilities as well. I mean, and it's very sad. It's very sad when it occurs. So it's something that we are really hopeful to work with King County on pilot programming, anything to see if we can, kind of arrest that particular addiction.
How is you mentioned earlier, the King County Regional Homelessness Authority, a new partnership of local governments to help manage this crisis. How has it affected what you do, or has it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're a homelessness organization, so we're going to interface with the agency, and all of our referrals I would say most of our referrals come through KCHRA. So that's a very important partner for us, because we want to make sure that that the referrals are going to stay, and that they are appropriate for our type of care. So we find them, to be a good partner. We're still trying to learn our way because they're new, but we're very hopeful that their growing pains are behind them, and they're going to have some new leadership soon, and we're looking for our relationship continuing to grow.
You led Pioneer Human Services for many years, which provides employment opportunity to folks coming out of homelessness. Where do you think that strategy fits into our response to the homelessness crisis today, which you noted earlier is largely driven by a lack of housing within our community? But can we be doing more to create and connect employment opportunities to folks that are living on the streets?
Yeah. So interestingly, so Pioneer, the the individual that Pioneer serves almost always has a record. So they struggle with housing differently. So housing discrimination is a huge block to people that are formerly incarcerated. And so I think we also need to take a look at landlord-tenant law across the state to make sure that individuals that are formerly incarcerated have an opportunity to seek and get housing. Now, Seattle did pass an anti-discrimination ordinance, and King County as well, but there's still some loopholes that tend to block people that are formerly incarcerated. So that's one thing, because if someone can't get housing, they're not going to be a good employee. They'll eventually lose their employment, and then once they're homeless, then you're more susceptible to traumatic events, which then makes you more susceptible to drug use, and then addiction follows. So homelessness is a cause of substance use disorder as well as people that have it. So it kind of goes both ways. So it's very important that we can house everyone in our society, I think. But employment is also a key to staying housed, and that's when our peers come in. So, for example, Plymouth, we are a permanent supportive housing provider, but we have peers that do other types of housing. So, for example, Bellwether is a very good partner of ours, and they are in the affordable housing business. So, if Bellwether can continue to add units, continue to house more people that are vulnerable, then it's kind of starting to slow, right, the entry of people into homelessness. So it really takes all of us together to create a safety net that's got less permeation to it.
What do you see as Plymouth's greatest challenge over the next year or so?
Maintaining our workforce. So workforce stabilization. We've made great strides in how we compensate our workforce, and I'm very pleased about that. But there's still a lot of things we need to do. We need to do more training on de-escalation, for example. We need to make sure
with residents.
Oh yeah, and also individuals that are just near a building. There was a shooting outside our building just 2 days ago, or it was 2 blocks down. So we have to make sure that they are safe and happy when they come to work, so that they can support others. I think we have to continue to make sure that we're growing at the appropriate pace. So our pace we want to grow at is 200 units a year as a minimum. So that's hard. That's a lot of growth, but that's important. For Plymouth, we want to make sure that we're staying top of cutting edge services and resources and building construction. I was talking to our head of real estate development, and she said, we're going to try a new flooring. We try a new flooring type every new building because we want something that's going to last, that we don't have to replace. So there's a lot of things that are challenges, but our employees are probably the most important resource that we have.
Are there things the city could be doing to make your job easier of building new housing in Seattle? I noticed recently they waived design review requirements for affordable housing projects and State Environmental Protection Act requirements. Are there other things, and how helpful do you expect those actions to be in your ability to bring housing online faster and cheaper than you would otherwise?
Those, I would say, the city of Seattle is a great partner, and they've been very supportive. They just recently authorized a grant to all PSH providers that were quite helpful. It's called a Workforce Stabilization Grant. I think the biggest thing is we need to think about a new housing model, and I'd like to partner with the city on. I've started some discussion with them. So, so many of the people that come to permanent supportive housing will stay there the rest of their lives. And the model was for permanent supportive housing, and then maybe a person gets employment and then they go into affordable housing, or they might age and then go into a nursing home. And for the folks that stay at Plymouth, they will age and then they'll end their lives with Plymouth. But we don't have necessarily a later stage model of PSH, and our average age of our resident is increasing. So the next thing that I would like to explore is not quite a nursing home concept, but something that is a model that allows our residents to age with dignity, that is appropriate for them. And so I think that's our next frontier.
And what percentage of the folks that are living with you do you think that are employable, that are that could be at Plymouth in a unit for a temporary period of time, and then gain employment and wages spent in the private market for housing and free up space in some of your existing facilities? Do you think, is that being optimized today across sort of affordable housing providers in our community? Is that a strategy? Or are there some folks that are just, because of physical disabilities and other issues, they're likely not to be able to hold a job, and they need that unit and those services in perpetuity?
So I would say that for permanent supportive housing, the requirement to even get into a Plymouth facility is you have to have been chronically homeless, and you have to have a disability.
And chronically meaning?
Chronically means you've been homeless a year prior, or you've had 4 instances of homelessness in the 3-year period before. And you have to have a significant disability. So and many of our residents will have 2 or more disabilities. Yeah. So, and then if you look at the percentage that are over 55%, that's when you're starting to be coming to age out of the workforce. So if I look at the under 55 population at Plymouth, which is less than 50% of our population, there is a percentage of those that could easily join the workforce, particularly if we can get substance use disorder issues managed better. But for individuals that are over the age of 65, I would say that their 40-hour-a-week workdays are behind them.
Is it getting easier to site buildings in this city and neighborhoods, and now that you're in other cities, you're opening in Bellevue, or is it still a struggle that makes the project cost more and take longer to get delivered?
Well, it won't take the project longer, but I would say in almost every new location except for one, we've had to work hard to win over the community. And it's very important to us that we do it. But yeah, I mean, there's folks that really would rather not have a permanent supportive housing building right next door. And so what we try to do is show that our residents can be great neighbors, and we'll do what we can to make that, building be a beautiful building and a pleasant experience for everyone.
And you have built some beautiful buildings, and
we have
and been great neighbors.
Yes.
And if folks haven't seen your new building, the Blake House up on Madison, First Hill, it's gorgeous. Your partnership with Bellwether. And it's open now, right?
It is open.
Folks have moved in.
People are moving in. And I was just there. And it's, there's nothing like, this is the best part of the job, is when you are there and a resident gets their keys. And our staff are very sensitive in how that's done. But the day they get their apartment, oh my gosh, it's, if you don't tear up, you don't have a heart. So, and so I was talking to one of the new Blake House residents. I said, how you like your new place? And he said, I feel like I won the lottery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he said, I got my stuff out of storage. I've had all my things in storage for 5 years. And he had a guitar collection. And that's the one thing that he kept
Wow.
through all that period of homelessness.
Yeah,
So-
I think I read one story of a resident of up there that maybe lived on the streets right around.
Yeah, that was him.
Oh, was that him?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right around the corner.
For years, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh, wow, this building goes up and I get a unit. That's great. Are there communities or organizations around the country that you think we can learn from in how they're addressing a similar set of issues? Or do you feel like Seattle, even despite its challenges and slower progress than what we would like, is generally doing the right set of things? And if we had more resources, if we didn't have a housing market that was so challenging, but for that, we'd be making more progress.
So 2 of my staff members went to a conference just 2 weeks ago, and there are some pretty cool things in terms of building design that some other communities are doing that we want to think about and take a look at. On the other hand, in some ways, Seattle's doing it right, which is pretty scary because we're not putting enough money to the issue. But in terms of the county and the cities working together, the suburban cities this past year decided that many of them wanted to start contributing to KCHRA, which I think is important. So it's not just Seattle, not just King County. And the fact that we do run levies. And we also have some partnerships that we probably haven't done, given enough justice to. But Amazon, for example, has really put some money towards low-income housing funding, right? And Microsoft has as well. So I would say that the public-private partnership side of the house is, I would say, we're a model to other areas. And the fact that our community will galvanize to tax itself rather than just complain about it. So,
and it's done that for
and
many
it's
decades,
done it for
right?
many years.
1980s
Yes.
or so, we've had a local property tax levy, which you don't find in most other communities.
That's right.
Yeah. How do you deal with just the cost of building units, building new, which just seems to go up every year? I mean, it's going up for anybody building anything in Seattle and other high-cost areas. But when does affordable housing not become unaffordable because of what you have to spend? Or do you look at it as the services that the certain population needs are worth the investment because the alternative is that much more expensive?
The alternative is much more expensive, and it's not right. I mean, we all have to live with ourselves. And when you have a community that is doing so well, to have people that, don't have a home on the street, I mean, we have to ask ourselves, what is right? So I think I would say the alternative is just not acceptable. So we have to figure out a way. The cost to construct is not the barrier, though, in permanent supportive housing. It's actually the cost to provide services, because
The ongoing
costs.
Yeah.
Because what we are doing is we are bearing them for the community. But otherwise, you'd be using emergency rooms, jails, libraries,
the ambulance.
That's right. To help individuals that need help.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of hidden costs to the status quo of leaving
Absolutely.
people outside that we maybe don't see or don't take for granted or aren't quantified in the same ways that you can look at a pro forma for a development project.
We keep trying. To measure
you've got some
that.
great numbers,
and
too,
we
right?
do have some numbers.
Yeah,
and
what does it cost to be in Harborview? What does it
That's
cost
right.
to be in the jail?
Yeah, and we are much cheaper than Harborview or jail.
Yeah. We have a standard question on our podcast here of your first job. We've talked a lot about your current one, and you have a very distinguished and interesting career in working for governors, Pioneer Human Services, former attorney. What was your first job that you got a paycheck for?
So since you said paycheck, that makes it different.
Yeah,
because
not some under the table.
Well,
deal, but-
I mean,
what was that to you?
I was a bagger.
Oh yeah.
I was a bagger
At
at
a
the
grocery-
commissary at
Okay.
JBLM. So I was called Fort Lewis back then.
Yeah.
But we bagged groceries and You would try to tell the person coming down whether they'd be a good tip. And we used to get 25 cents a bag. And and I don't know if you watch the Mariners.
Oh, yeah.
I watched. So Mike Blowers was a bagger.
With you?
Yeah, there were a whole bunch of us in high school. A lot of the kids that did sports would bag because you could do it on the weekend. And you get really good,
What's your technique?
Oh my gosh, you would open 4 bags at a time. And this is an army commissary. It's like a grocery store. And so they have about 30 lanes. And I mean, people, the groceries come at you pretty fast. And so you kind of have to bag them in order. And, you put cans in a bag, chemicals in a bag, meat in a bag, dry in a bag, and then you just load them on. Yep.
So you're probably not shying away from the self-checkout at the grocery store like I do. I hate that thing.
You
put your old skills to work and just...
I still look and see what they put in the bags. I'm like, did they really?
So you're letting them do it, yeah.
Did they
and then
put,
you're
Did they put
criticizing
meat
them.
next to bleach? Did you really do that just now?
Keep your chicken and Clorox separate.
That's right.
I like that. Your next stop after bagging groceries at JBLM, formerly Fort Lewis.
Yes. Well, so I mean, this is going back to 1981. And in 1980, the first class of women graduated from West Point, from the Naval Academy and from the Air Force Academy. And so I think once I saw women graduate, I wanted to go too. So I'm pretty sure I started my application process right about 1980. And they also have West Point has field force recruiters out here. And I met the field force recruiter, and he was really helpful in getting my application together. And and luckily, I was accepted. Who wouldn't want to go? That's my thing. I mean, who would not want to go to one of the best higher ed institutions on the planet? It just challenges everything about you. It challenges you academically, physically, discipline, military. Back then we had to make our beds every day, clean our rooms. Cadets today have it a little easier. They clean their room. That's what I've heard, only once a quarter. But I mean, the school is just incredible, and it puts out just amazing leaders, that protect our country and our way of life. And it was a great decision that I think I'm very proud of it, and I'm wearing my ring today. So it really changed my life.
Made Clover Park proud.
Yeah, Clover Park had 8 or 10 graduates in my class go to service academies.
Wow.
So 2 went to West Point, and I think 3 went to Air Force Academy, and 1 went to Navy. 1 went to Merchant Marine. And the other individual that went to West Point, he ended up being in the same company as I did. So his name was Dan Sharon. I was with him all 4 years. And he's had a great career as well. So, yeah, it's a great school. Great school.
Before we do put our final question to you, we should just let people know opportunities to get involved with Plymouth. You've got some great volunteer initiatives, and how can people help if they want to help?
Absolutely. So certainly fundraising always helps, or coming to one of our events. So we have
which fun.
Which we have fun fundraising events
in town.
We have our young professionals group is called POP, Promoters of Plymouth, and they have what's called a Pops and Tops event, and we just had it last week. The theme was Interstellar Disco. These young professionals, they looked great. It was a fun event.
And whatever you all are doing to engage young people, like the rest of us can learn, because those are big events. You've got this army of people that are super plugged in and engaged.
They do.
Congrats to your team for whatever
and
they've done to
it's the young
achieve that.
people. My daughter is 26, and she went, and so she's going to join POP.
Yeah,
I mean, she just
she's
thinks
convinced.
it's great. So, but we also have our annual luncheon, so you can certainly, come to that, sponsor a table, and then we have our Dancing with the Stars event, Seattle Dances. So, of course, fundraising, which is always important. And then for our new buildings, we give every guest a gift basket. And it takes a group of people to stock the baskets, make the room up. So our staff don't do that; volunteers do that. So when an individual moves into their new home, the bed is made. They have sheets. They have a laundry basket with dryer sheets in it. They have food and some, I think some plates, and we have volunteers put that whole room together. So we may have some opportunities at our next opening, which is Plymouth Crossings in Bellevue, and just reach out to us if it's something that you might want to volunteer.
You mentioned the Seattle Dances event. Don't you as the new CEO have to sign up to do that?
Yes.
Are you in?
I am in.
You're going to do it next year?
I will do
Yeah.
it, and I'm looking forward to it. It's probably the only organization that says you have to dance.
Is that what the board told you when they hired you?
You have to dance if
Yeah.
you want to be the CEO of Plymouth.
I did it in 2016, I think. It was one of the 7 or so, and it was a blast.
I bet. Were you nervous when you got in front of everyone?
Yeah, because that dance floor at Fremont Studios had just a little unevenness to it, and I was convinced I was gonna trip on that, but I didn't, and we made it through the tango, me and Erica Atnip, and it was a lot of fun, and I really missed it when it was done, because it's, I don't know, 3 months or so.
3 months of practice.
Twice a week, going up to Century Ballroom, and I loved it. It was this great escape. Your mind is only focused on dancing, because the tango was hard for me. It wasn't.
Do you look at the crowd at all, or do you just focus in on dancing?
Yeah, you're in a zone. You're in a zone. But I loved it. I had a lot of fun. So
wow.
I think there's a YouTube video still
somewhere. I'm going to watch it. I haven't watched yours.
Me in a red sequin vest doing the tango.
Okay.
So my tango career ended that night, but it was a lot of fun. So I'm going to look forward to being at the event and seeing you do your thing.
Okay.
Well, we didn't get to our final question. Our final question, before we conclude, is the itinerary for your perfect Saturday in the Seattle area.
I don't have one, because every Saturday is perfect.
Oh.
So it depends on the season.
Yeah, and you get to pick the season. You have latitude here with this question.
Well, this is Father's Day coming up. I don't know when this podcast will air, but I think so. Since every Saturday is perfect, I'll just pick one. So we're going to the Mariners game. And they're doing the Negro Leagues jerseys. And I've wanted to go to that game for years. And so we're going to that game. And then my husband wanted to eat at the best steak place in town. So we're going to go eat there after the game.
And where is that?
Met. That's the one he likes.
Yeah.
Metropolitan Grill. So since it's the day before Father's Day and that makes him very happy, then that would be my favorite Saturday in June.
There you go.
But there's a lot of others. There's 50 others.
Right.
And so, there's skiing, there's sun, there's boating, there's hiking, there's friends, there's laying on the couch, there's reading. So all of those can make it become a favorite Saturday.
We have an abundance of opportunities here in our city and region.
Yes.
So I like yours on Sunday. I'm going to do a version of that, or on Saturday. I'm going to do a version of that this weekend myself. So go M's.
That's right. They need to win.
Thank you, Karen, for making time for us and for your leadership at Plymouth and all the other great things that you've done for our community at Pioneer Human Services and elsewhere.
At Plymouth?
No, I know. No,
okay.
yeah. Previously at Pioneer Human Services, but
That's
now
right.
at Plymouth. And we didn't even get to your board service, which is extensive as well. And we will soon welcome you on the board of the Downtown Seattle Association. So thanks for making time in your schedule for that service as well.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, hope you enjoyed my conversation with Karen, a terrific individual and a tremendous leader in our community, someone I've just really enjoyed getting to know over the last year or so, and grateful that she's added one more thing to her plate and agreed to join the board of the Downtown Seattle Association. So thanks again to Karen for making time. I want to close out with a recommendation, 2 recommendations actually, for things you just got to check out in downtown Seattle. One is the new restaurant at 7th and Pike in the ground floor of the Sheridan Hotel. Alder and Ash opened in early June in the former space that the Daily Grill occupied. You won't recognize the space anymore. It was completely gutted and redone. It's a gorgeous new bar and restaurant, and there's a South Sound connection here, a South Puget Sound connection, which I think Karen will appreciate. It's appropriate that we're highlighting this restaurant because the executive chef there is Blake Lord Wittig, who was the owner and chef of the highly acclaimed De La Terre in Steilacoom, Washington, and spent some time at some other restaurants in Tacoma. So he's bringing his talents to the kitchen at Alder and Ash at the corner of 7th and Pike. Go check it out. It's a beautiful space, and the food and drink looks delicious as well. And my other recommendation is Pike Street Coffee, which opened about a year ago in May of 2022, down on the hill climb there between the waterfront and the Pike Place Market. Just a great coffee spot with some great merchandise, note cards, postcards, prints, mugs, and tumblers, and all sorts of things. Lovely outdoor patio, really cool spot, and it's just above the under construction waterfront and aquarium and overlook walk. So there's a bonus. You can check out the progress being made on the development of our waterfront park, and it's a lot of progress down there. If you haven't been in recent weeks or months, it's coming along. So go check out Pike Street Coffee down on the hill climb, and then grab a coffee and wander the waterfront park, which is making its way toward completion in the summer or so of 2025. It's going to be phenomenal. Well, thanks for joining us for this episode of Seattle City Makers, presented by the Downtown Seattle Association, with support from James Cito and production by Spark Creative.